Sometimes the quietest places hold the loudest echoes, and sometimes healing begins in the dark. But before we begin this emotional journey, if stories of hope, second chances, and human connection move your heart, we invite you to subscribe to the channel. Every story here is crafted with care to remind us all that kindness still matters, and that even broken things can be made beautiful again. Now, let's begin. Single dad checked basement lights at 2 a.m. The CEO, in a hoodie, said, "It's warm when you're here." The storm had rolled in fast that night, sweeping across the city like a curtain of steel-gray sorrow. Rain hammered the rooftop of the Sterling Tower, and lightning danced through the glass high above. Down in the maintenance office, tucked behind a loading bay, Noah Green pulled on his damp jacket, the edges frayed like his nerves. His work boots squelched slightly as he stood, the call just received still echoing in his ears. Panel D in the basement tripped again. "Lights are flickering. Might be water. Check it out." Noah glanced at the clock. 2:46 a.m. Ella would be asleep wrapped in the weighted blanket he'd bought from a second-hand store last winter. Her asthma had kept her up the past few nights, and tonight was the first peaceful sleep she'd had in days. He didn't want to leave her, but the job was the job, and the job was what kept the rent paid and her medication coming. He grabbed his flashlight and toolbox and headed down the concrete steps to the sublevel. The elevator didn't go to this floor. You had to know the stairwell, the smell of mildew and metal getting stronger with each descending step. The lights here were motion sensor, and tonight they were lagging, flickering slowly to life in jerky stutters like a memory trying to form. Panel D was tucked into a side wall near a section of unused storage behind a rusted chain-link gate. The water leak had likely come from a nearby pipe. Noah crouched and inspected the wiring, definitely damp. As he reached for the breaker box, he heard it. A voice, very faint. 8, 9, 10. He turned slowly, squinting into the darkness behind the gate. A flashlight clicked on not his. It was dim, weak, like the last breath of a dying battery. The beam hovered low, then lifted to reveal her. A woman sat on the concrete floor, knees drawn to her chest, her back against the wall. Her hoodie was too large, the sleeves pulled over her hands. She wasn't frightened. She didn't startle when he found her. She looked at him like she'd been waiting. Noah hesitated. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She didn't answer right away. The cassette recorder beside her crackled and repeated 8, 9, 10. Then a soft click as it rewound. "I thought I fixed that panel," he said, unsure why he was speaking, unsure why his voice had gone so soft. The woman looked up. Her eyes were red, but not from crying. Not recently, anyway. "The lights keep failing," she said. "Down here they always do." Noah studied her face in the weak glow. Early 40s, maybe late 30s. Not homeless, not disoriented. Just still. A stillness too controlled to be accidental. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a slightly damp flannel scarf. "It's cold," he offered. "This isn't much," but she didn't take it, not at first. She looked at it like it was something sacred. "You don't even know who I am," she said. Noah tilted his head. "Does that matter? It's 50 degrees in here and there's standing water." A faint smile touched her lips. She took the scarf gently and wrapped it around herself without a word. Then, as if the gesture unlocked something, she added, "My son used to count like that. Over and over, like he was holding the world together with numbers." Noah lowered himself to sit careful not to slip on the damp floor. "He's got a good voice," he said, nodding toward the tape recorder. The woman turned it off. "It's all I have left of him." Silence blanketed the space, but it wasn't heavy, it was honest, raw. Noah knew grief. He carried it in his chest like an extra lung always aching. His wife, Grace, had died when Ella was 2. An aneurysm. No warning, no goodbye. Just one day a voicemail, and the next silence. Sometimes he said quietly, "I think silence is worse than noise." At least with noise you can tell yourself someone's still there." The woman turned to him, eyes glimmering in the dim light. "You're the first person who didn't ask me to leave." Noah shrugged. "You don't look like trouble." She let out a soft breath. "That's the thing about grief, it doesn't wear a uniform." The lights above flickered again. Noah stood. "I should finish fixing the panel before something shorts again. You'll be okay." She nodded. "I'm not really here, you know. Not officially. I won't tell if you won't." He bent to open the breaker box. Wires sparked faintly. The woman spoke once more, so soft it almost got swallowed by the hum of the wiring. "It's warm. When you're here." He froze, then turned slightly toward her. But she was already curling back into herself, the scarf now close around her like armor. Noah reset the breaker. The lights steadied. The flicker died out. But something else had sparked instead, quiet, fragile, real. He looked back one last time before leaving. The tape recorder lay silent beside her. And for a moment she looked like a statue carved out of grief and memory, grounded not by stone, but by something else. Something warmer. When he stepped back into the stairwell, he didn't know her name, but somehow she knew his. The next night, Noah arrived early. He told himself it was because the boiler on the 6th floor had been acting up, or that the new security lights needed rechecking, or that maybe, just maybe, he was tired of staring at the same ceiling alone, while Ella coughed herself to sleep in the next room. But the truth sat heavier than any toolbox he carried. He wanted to know if the woman in the basement had been real. He descended the familiar stairwell, boots echoing down the narrow shaft. The building above was sleeping executives' long-gone cubicles, empty, the city's heartbeat softened by midnight rain. But down here, everything felt alive in a different way. Raw, honest, unfiltered by polite hallway greetings or company policy. When he opened the basement door, the air greeted him with the same chill. The lights flickered again, delayed like reluctant eyes opening from a long sleep. But she wasn't there. The same corner lay empty. No hoodie, no faint glow of a dying flashlight, no tape recorder whispering numbers from the past. Noah set down his bag, exhaled, and looked around. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. The space felt hollow now, like something meaningful had visited and left behind only the echo of what could have been. He walked to the panel tools in hand, but his attention was distracted by something small tucked behind a utility crate near the wall. A thermos. Still warm when he touched it. He unscrewed the lid. Peppermint tea. Noah blinked. That wasn't left by accident. He scanned the floor. Near the spot where she'd sat the night before, faint outlines of footprints marked the damp concrete, slightly smudged but unmistakably recent. She'd been here. Maybe minutes ago. He settled on the concrete step, thermos in hand, and waited. Time passed. An hour, maybe 2. He didn't look at his watch. It was enough to be still for once, to let the night breathe around him. He almost forgot about everything else, about rent, asthma inhalers, the overtime that never seemed to come. He had just decided to leave when a voice called from the dark behind him. "You waited." Noah turned. Noah. She stood by the door, hood down now. Her hair was pinned loosely, raindrops glinting like stars in the strands. Her posture wasn't defensive anymore. It was thoughtful, cautious. "You left tea," he said. Seemed like a promise. She smiled, just a shadow of one. "You're not like the others. I take it you've met a lot of janitors." "I've met a lot of people," she said, stepping closer. "Most of them either want something or want to run from something. And I'm neither." "You're still." "That's rare." He motioned to the empty step beside him. She hesitated just long enough to make him wonder if she'd leave again. But then she sat, tucking her legs beneath her, mirroring the exact position from the night before. For a moment, they didn't speak. Then Noah asked softly, "What was his name?" She turned to him, eyes softening. "Eli," she said. "He was 5. Noah nodded. Mine's Ella. She's 6 now, born with bronchial asthma. Some days are good. Some days feel like holding your breath for hours, waiting for her to take hers. A silence settled again, this one not hollow but reverent, as though the basement itself had paused to listen. I lost Eli 3 years ago, she said. He touched a broken heater switch in an old rental unit. The landlord had ignored 4 warnings. I was on a conference call overseas. You blame yourself. Wouldn't you? Noah looked down at his hands. Every night. I worked a second job when my wife died. I always thought if I'd been there. She interrupted, but gently. It wouldn't have mattered. He glanced at her. She wasn't trying to fix him. She wasn't saying it to soothe. She was saying it because she knew. Do you come down here often? He asked. It's the only part of the building they haven't redesigned. It's untouched and broken. Like me, I guess. Noah leaned back against the wall. Sometimes I think broken things are the only things worth fixing. At least they're honest. She laughed softly, a dry, hushed sound like wind passing through autumn leaves. I don't even know your name, she said. Noah. She looked at him. Fitting. You fix what's flooding. And you... A pause. Then Evelyn. It landed between them with unexpected weight. Now she was real. No longer a mystery in the dark. Evelyn. The name sounded strong, timeless, like it belonged to someone who had weathered storms long before this one. Are you supposed to be here? He asked, watching her carefully now. No, she admitted. But I'm not supposed to be gone either. This is the only place I still feel tethered. To Eli, to myself. The tea had gone cold between them, but neither moved to leave. Noah didn't need to know the rest. Not yet. The building she stood atop during the day was a fortress. This basement was her confession box. You know, he said as he stood to go, this place may be broken, but at least it listens. Evelyn looked up at him. And you? He smiled gently. I listened too. She watched him walk to the stairwell door, toolbox in hand. But just before he reached it, she called out once more, quieter than before, but clear. You can come back, if you want. Noah nodded without turning. Only if you promise not to disappear again. She didn't promise, but she didn't say no, and for now, that was enough. The following week passed in a slow unraveling of quiet encounters. Noah didn't tell anyone about Evelyn. He carried her name like a stone, warmed in his pocket, grounding personal, not for show. She never asked him to come back, not explicitly, but the thermos kept reappearing, and so did she. They spoke in low tones beneath buzzing bulbs, surrounded by cold pipes and flickering shadows. Down in the basement, neither of them had to perform. There were no job titles, no expectations, no pasts that demanded explanation. Only presence. And in that presence, something fragile began to take root. Tonight, she was already there when he arrived. She was sitting cross-legged on the same concrete step hoodie draped across her knees. The tape recorder was gone. In its place, she held a small sketch pad, her pencil gliding over the page with gentle intent. Didn't know you could draw? Noah said as he entered, his voice softer than usual. She didn't look up. I don't really, but sometimes it helps me remember. He set down his bag and crouched beside her. The drawing was of a tree, simple, childlike, but near the roots a tiny boy stood with arms raised, trying to touch the branches. Eli. She nodded. He used to call trees upside-down rivers. Said the roots drank from the ground and the branches poured into the sky. Noah smiled. That's beautiful. He was. A pause settled between them. Not awkward, more like reverence. Evelyn closed the sketch pad and leaned her head back against the cold wall. Her breath fogged in the air. I haven't been able to draw anything since he passed, she said. Until I met you. Noah blinked. Me. You talk like everything matters, even things people step over. Like the way you describe fixing wires as if you're calming them down, not just repairing them. I guess. When life falls apart, you notice the pieces more, he said. She turned to him, eyes narrowed in something almost like gratitude. It's not just noticing. It's respecting. That's different. He didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever described him that way before, not his former bosses, not even Grace. Most people saw him as the guy with calloused hands and circles under his eyes. A decent worker. A quiet father. No more, no less. But Evelyn saw him in layers. Not what he did, but how he did it. That meant something. She drew her knees closer to her chest. I never told anyone this, but the day Eli died, I was supposed to be home. I told my assistant I needed 1 more hour on the call with Tokyo. I thought I had time. Noah stayed quiet. Let her speak. When they found him, he was still holding the little plastic screwdriver from his toy set. He thought he could fix it. Like Mommy always does. Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. She pressed her lips together as if emotion had to earn its way out. I would give anything to go back, she whispered. Noah gently reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded photograph. It was a little crumpled, but he unfolded it with care. This is Ella, he said, handing it to her. In the photo, a 6-year-old girl with messy curls and bright eyes grinned while holding up a small snow globe. She collects them, he said. Says they're little memories trapped in time. Evelyn studied the image like it was sacred. She looks happy. She is. But she misses her mom. And I miss the version of myself I used to be. Evelyn handed back the photo. Maybe we don't lose ourselves. Maybe we just get covered in dust, and someone shows up with a cloth and wipes a little part clean again. Noah chuckled softly. That might be the most poetic thing I've heard in a basement. They sat in shared silence again. Pipes hissed in the walls and something dripped in the far corner. But it wasn't lonely. It was almost safe. I should probably go soon, she murmured. I have an early board meeting. Do they know you sneak off to cry with the janitor? He teased lightly. She laughed, a real one this time. They wouldn't understand. They don't know this version of me. Which one? The one that doesn't have to be in charge all the time. Noah leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You know, you don't have to disappear every time things get hard. I'm not asking you to fix anything. I'm just here. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. There was a softness in her expression that hadn't been there before. Less armor, more ache, and trust. I know, she said. That's why I keep coming back. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small thermos he'd brought this time. Trade you, he said. I made chamomile. She grinned. Deal. They sipped tea in silence until the clock ticked past 3:30. Then Evelyn stood dusting off her pants. Before she turned to go, she paused. You fix wires, Noah. But you also fix something else. Don't ever forget that. He watched her disappear into the stairwell shadows. And though the lights still flickered overhead, Noah swore the basement didn't feel so dark anymore. Noah came in early again the next night. He didn't bring tools this time, only the excuse that the panel might need another look. But when he reached the basement stairwell, the keypad lock blinked red. He tried again. Same result. The door didn't open. Noah frowned. The basement had never been locked from his side before. Not unless maintenance orders were issued from upper management, rare, especially at this hour. He tapped the intercom, but no one answered. Back in the control office, he scanned the logs. A new entry had been added, restricted access sublevel locked for electrical audit. An audit that wasn't standard. Not at this time of night. Not without notice. And definitely not without informing the guy who was supposed to be the one auditing things. He checked again. Under requester, the name was listed Richard Camden, head of security. Noah's stomach turned. He didn't like Camden. No one did. The man had a jaw made of concrete and eyes like searchlights. The kind who saw the world in threat levels and protocol breaches. Evelyn had once mentioned that she tolerated him out of necessity, but now something felt off. He spent the rest of the shift above ground, restless. As dawn crept across the skyline, Noah finally returned home where Ella was just waking up. She sat on the couch in her dinosaur pajamas, holding her inhaler like a teddy bear. "Did you fix the lights again, Daddy?" He ruffled her curls. "Not tonight, kiddo. Someone locked the door." Ella scrunched her face. Why would someone lock a basement? He didn't answer, but in his chest unease grew like a vine tightening. 2 days passed. The basement remained locked. No messages, no thermos, no Evelyn. It was like she'd vanished. On the third night, he made an excuse to Camden, said he'd heard reports of flickering lights again, might need to check the lower systems. Camden didn't even look up from his clipboard. Sublevels off limits for now. Why? Orders from the top. Noah stared. Who at the top? Camden finally looked up. His voice was dry, measured. "Sometimes the less you know, the longer you last around here." Something in Noah's stomach dropped. He walked away without pressing further, but the question haunted him. Had Evelyn been found down there? Had someone reported her? Was Camden trying to silence something? Or was she gone because she chose to be? The following evening, Noah waited near the freight elevator at the back of the building. It was mostly unused after midnight, a good place to watch the stairs without being obvious. He saw her just past 2 a.m. Evelyn, dressed in business black this time. No hoodie, no sketch pad. A stranger's version of the woman he'd met in the dark. She exited the elevator alone, but her steps were slower than usual and her eyes darted cautious. Noah called her name low and urgent. She turned eyes wide, not angry, not surprised, just tired. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "Neither should you." "But we were," he said, "together. What happened?" She glanced down the corridor, then motioned him into the nearby janitor's closet. Once inside, with the door shut and only the faint light from his keyring bulb, her shoulders dropped. "I didn't tell them," she said. "I didn't say anything about you." Noah's heart pounded. "Then why is the basement locked? I think Camden saw me. There's a motion camera feed I forgot about." He didn't confront me, but he mentioned unauthorized usage of private space. "And you didn't defend it, I did. But there's only so far I can go before it becomes suspicious." She leaned against the wall, voice tight. "They already think I'm unstable. 3 months ago, I delayed a merger because I couldn't concentrate. I'm being watched, evaluated." Noah felt a mix of frustration and something worse, helplessness. "And so, what, you're human. You lost your son. You grieve. That's not instability, Evelyn. Not in your world, maybe. But up there," she pointed toward the ceiling. "Grief is weakness. Stillness is incompetence. Kindness is risk." She closed her eyes. "I wasn't supposed to get attached. I just wanted a place to disappear. You ruined that." There it was, the sting. But she wasn't finished. "And I'm glad," she said, "because for the first time in years I felt like someone saw me." The light flickered slightly above them. She stepped closer. "But if I stay down there with you, I lose everything I've built. Every piece of armor I've welded together since Eli died." Noah met her gaze. "Then let it go. Maybe what you're holding on to isn't saving you. It's burying you." She looked away. A single breath escaped like it hurt to let go. "I can't fix you," he continued, "and I'm not asking you to fix me. But maybe we're both allowed to exist in the same broken place, without shame, without permission." A long pause followed. "I've wanted to tell someone," she whispered. "Everything. Not to be rescued. Just to be believed." Noah nodded. "Then tell me. Anytime. Anywhere." Her eyes watered, but she wiped them quickly. "Camden's filing a report," she said. "About me. About inappropriate conduct with staff. He doesn't have evidence, but he knows how to twist shadows into proof." Noah's fists clenched. "I'll speak up. I'll know. That would only make it worse. For both of us. Her voice cracked, but she recovered. Promise me you won't say anything. Please. He swallowed hard. Okay. She took his hand. Her touch was cool, trembling, but real. Thank you for giving me the only space I didn't have to lie. She opened the closet door slowly. Light flooded in. I have to go. When will I see you again? I don't know, she said already, walking away. But just before she turned the corner, she looked back and whispered, The basement may be locked, but I remember every light you fixed. Then she was gone. And for the first time since Grace died, Noah realized something had broken in him again. Not from loss, but from the fear of losing someone he hadn't even had the chance to hold on to yet. The lobby looked different in the daylight. Polished marble floors, gold trim elevators, voices that echoed with importance. Noah never liked it. It reminded him of how invisible he was up here, how much more comfortable he felt below where the floors creaked and the pipes leaked, and no one expected him to wear a smile or a tie. But today, he wasn't on a maintenance run. He stood near the receptionist's desk holding a small envelope in his hand. Inside was the picture Ella had drawn, a simple crayon-colored basement with yellow lights, a cup of tea, and 3 stick figures, Noah, Ella, and a woman with a gray hoodie labeled E. The drawing had appeared in his lunchbox that morning with a note written in awkward 6-year-old cursive. Maybe she forgot how to smile. You can give it back to her. Now here he was, unsure what he was even trying to accomplish. The receptionist barely looked up. Can I help you? I just wanted to drop something off. For Evelyn Langford. The woman blinked. Do you have an appointment? No, just a note. Personal. She gave him the once-over. Tool belt, scuffed boots, his name stitched in faded thread across his shirt. Whatever she thought of him, she didn't say it out loud. I'll check if she's in. But as the woman turned, the elevator doors behind them slid open with a soft chime. Evelyn stepped out, flanked by 2 board members and a fast-talking assistant with a tablet. Her hair was up her blazer crisp. She looked nothing like the woman who had once whispered stories in the basement, and yet her eyes found him instantly. For a split second, the noise of the lobby faded. Everything else blurred, just them suspended in that moment. Then it shattered. One of the men said something, and Evelyn looked away. Her pace didn't break. She passed Noah without a word, without even a glance back. He stood still, envelope clenched in his hand. The receptionist noticed. She's in back-to-back meetings today. I'm sorry. Noah nodded, jaw tight. I'll just leave this. He placed the envelope gently on the counter and walked away. Back in the maintenance room, Noah sat beside his toolbox in silence. Around him, the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant clank of vents filled the air. Stillness wasn't peace today. It was pressure. Dense and unwelcome. He hadn't expected a public embrace. Not even a hello. But the way she passed him like he didn't exist felt colder than any locked basement ever had. He pulled out the photograph of Ella again. Her toothy grin still made him smile even now. He thought about what he would tell her later. Sometimes people disappear even when they're standing right in front of you. That night he returned home earlier than usual. Ella sat cross-legged on the living room floor surrounded by glitter glue and cereal boxes. Her latest invention, a wish box complete with pink duct tape hinges. Did she like the drawing? She asked eagerly. Noah paused. I think she saw it. Ella looked up. But did she smile? He knelt beside her. Not today, sweetheart. Maybe she needs more pictures, she said seriously. Or a joke. People laugh when I tell jokes. He chuckled and kissed the top of her head. You're the best medicine I've got. Ella leaned into him. I think she'll come back, if you keep the lights on. 2 more days passed. No calls, no thermos, no word. Noah tried to focus on his work. Broken sinks, leaky ducts, a cracked tile near the 12th floor stairwell. But everything reminded him of her. Then on Thursday, something changed. He was called to the executive floor to replace a damaged light panel near the corner office. Not unusual, but the request had come under a different name. Not Evelyn's, not Camden's, just a generic system request lighting adjustment office 42G. Noah took the call. He climbed the stairs slowly, toolbox in hand, not expecting anything. Maybe hoping just enough to hurt. The hallway was quiet. Too quiet. He knocked once, then twice. No answer. He keyed in with the general override and stepped inside. The room was dim, curtains drawn. A desk sat near the window papers, scattered untouched coffee cooling on the side. On the wall, a framed photograph of a boy, curly-haired mid-laugh running through autumn leaves. Eli. Noah exhaled softly. Behind him, a door creaked. Evelyn stepped in from the private office attached to the suite, not in a blazer now, but in a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She froze when she saw him. Noah. He straightened. The light report came through. I didn't know it was you. Her eyes softened. I asked them to send someone. I didn't know if you'd come. Silence wrapped around them, thick with things left unsaid. I saw the drawing, she said finally. Ella's. I wasn't trying to make a scene, he said. I just thought maybe it would remind you what mattered. Evelyn walked slowly to the desk, picked up the drawing. She traced her finger along the crayon lines. I kept it, she whispered. I've looked at it every night. It's the only thing on this floor that feels like it's telling the truth. She looked up at him, then no shields. No performance. I didn't ignore you in the lobby, she said. I couldn't afford to be seen needing someone. Noah met her gaze. You don't have to need me, but you can trust me. That's different. A pause. Then Evelyn walked to him. Close now. She reached into the drawer and pulled out a familiar object, an old cassette recorder. I thought I'd lost this. Noah smiled gently. It was never really gone. Just waiting. She stared at the recorder, then at him. Something shifted in her eyes like a window had finally opened. I want to go back down there, she said, to where I stopped pretending. Noah didn't move. Then let's unlock the door. And just like that, something new began. Not in the boardroom, not in her title, but in the space between grief and grace where two broken people had once met under flickering lights. The elevator dinged at exactly 2:07 a.m. Noah stepped out first, toolbox in hand, even though neither of them expected to fix anything tonight. Evelyn followed close behind, wearing jean sneakers and that gray hoodie he'd almost forgotten how much he missed. The basement door had been unlocked earlier that day, no warning, no explanation. Just quietly removed from Camden's restricted list as if someone up top had either relented or been told subtly to back off. Noah suspected Evelyn had something to do with it. They walked down the stairwell in silence, side by side, their steps echoing in soft sync. When they reached the bottom, Evelyn hesitated before pushing open the door. Her fingers hovered just a moment over the handle. Then she turned to him. It might feel different now. He nodded. Different isn't always bad. The door creaked open. The room smelled the same, like damp concrete and rust and forgotten time. But something had shifted. Maybe it was the faint scent of chamomile she'd brought in her thermos. Or maybe it was just the fact that she wasn't hiding anymore. They stepped inside together. She looked around like someone visiting the grave of an old friend. Reverent. Cautious. Her gaze paused at the far wall where the tape recorder had once rested. She walked over and knelt down, fingertips brushing the ground. Right here, she whispered. Noah remained still, letting her have the moment. This was the first place I said his name out loud again, she said. Eli. After months of pretending I didn't have a past. Noah set the toolbox down gently. You don't have to pretend anymore. She looked back at him. I know, and that scares me more than anything. He crouched beside her. Because if you stop pretending, the grief comes back. No, she said, because then I have to decide what comes next." Silence followed, but it wasn't hollow. It was full of consideration of weight. Evelyn pulled the cassette recorder from her hoodie pocket and placed it back on the ground. Then she clicked it on. 7, 8, 9. The child's voice crackled through the basement like a hymn. She closed her eyes, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Noah watched, not intruding, letting the weight of her world settle back where it belonged. Then she spoke again, her voice low but steady. "I used to come down here to disappear. And now. She opened her eyes. "I come here to remember." She turned off the recorder. Noah sat beside her, back against the wall. "I still talk to Grace sometimes," he admitted. Not out loud. Just in the quiet. When Ella falls asleep. I tell her about the things I got wrong that day." Evelyn glanced over. "She was your wife." He nodded. "She died when Ella was 2. Brain aneurysm. No warning. She just didn't come home from work one night." Evelyn exhaled a long breath that seemed to hold the weight of shared sorrow. "You must have felt like the world stopped turning." "I did. For a while I thought if I stayed still enough time might reverse itself." "And did it?" "No," he said with a soft, broken laugh. "But it taught me that stillness isn't the same as giving up. Sometimes it's the only way to hear yourself again." She looked at him with something like awe. "You always speak like that, like you're not just saying things, you're stitching them." He shrugged. "Words are all I've got some nights." A pause. Then, like a shift in temperature, Evelyn said, "Camden submitted a formal report against me." Noah tensed. On what grounds he cited inappropriate interaction with staff and abuse of restricted property. Said I was compromising the building's safety by engaging in personal meetings off record. He clenched his fists. "That's absurd. All we did was talk. You didn't do anything wrong." "I know that," she said. "But truth doesn't always win when people have agendas. So, what now?" I resigned. Noah turned sharply. "What?" She nodded. "Effective next week. I'm stepping down as CEO." He stared at her, unable to mask the hurt in his eyes. "Because of me, no. Because of me," she said firmly. "I've been wearing a mask for years. Not just since Eli. Longer. I built this company to prove I wasn't weak after my divorce, that I could lead, outperform, succeed. But somewhere along the way I forgot what I actually valued." She stood now, pacing slowly. "I'm tired of surviving in rooms where I can't breathe, and more than anything I want to live a life Eli would be proud of." Noah rose, too. "And what does that life look like?" She looked up at him. "Simpler, more honest. Maybe with people who aren't afraid to drink tea in basements." He smiled at that. "You're not angry?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "No, I'm proud of you." Evelyn stepped closer. "I don't know where this leaves us, Noah. I don't know what's next." He held her gaze. "That's okay. I'm not going anywhere. I've built my life around staying when it's hard." She took his hand. Her fingers were cold but steady. And in that moment, neither of them needed promises. They just needed presence. The light above them flickered, then steadied. For once, the wires didn't need fixing. Sometimes the current just needed time to connect. The email hit the building like a thunderclap. At 9:03 a.m., Monday morning, every employee in Sterling Tower received the same concise message from the board of directors. Effective immediately, Evelyn Langford will be stepping down as CEO. We thank her for her service and leadership. There was no explanation, no farewell party, just silence like someone had pulled the power from the building's heart. Noah read the message on his cracked phone screen as he leaned against a stairwell railing on the 3rd floor. His breath caught in his throat, though he'd known it was coming. Still, seeing it final black and white official made it real in a way that tugged at something deeper than logic. The whispers started fast. Secretaries murmuring in break rooms. Security guards trading glances. Executives with tight jaws and fake smiles acting as though nothing had shifted when everything had. Noah didn't care about their opinions, but what he didn't expect, what blindsided him, was the wave of coldness that followed. That afternoon, he returned to the maintenance hub to find a notice pinned to the wall, a formal HR letter. Subject: Personnel Observation Review. Your recent interactions with senior staff have raised concerns regarding professional boundaries. Please be advised that additional oversight will be in place pending review. Noah stared at the paper, his jaw tightening. He didn't need to guess who had authored this. Camden's fingerprints were all over it, polite enough to pass legal, but sharp enough to threaten. That night he arrived home later than usual. Ella was already curled up on the couch with her sketch pad waiting for him. Did she leave? She asked quietly without looking up. Noah sat beside her, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah. Today. Did she say goodbye? He hesitated. Not yet. Ella pressed the crayons harder against the paper. Maybe she doesn't know how. He swallowed hard. Maybe. Ella turned the page and began drawing a house this time. 3 windows, a crooked roof smoke rising from the chimney in purple crayon. She could live here, she said. It's not big, but it has a backyard. Noah smiled through the ache in his chest. She'd like that. The next night, Noah returned to the basement. He wasn't even sure why. Habit, maybe. Or hope. The space felt emptier than usual. As if her absence had taken more than her presence, it had taken the silence with her too. He sat in their usual spot, poured himself tea from the last thermos she'd left, and stared at the wall where her son's drawing had once hung. He remembered her voice from that night I come here to remember. Now he understood something else. She also left to survive. The following morning, as Noah walked through the north corridor, Camden stepped out from the security room. He blocked the hallway casually, arms folded across his barrel chest. We need to talk. Noah kept walking. Camden's voice followed. You think I don't know what's going on? You think a janitor whispering sweet words in dark corners can't sink a company? Noah turned eyes steady. You mean a grieving mother found one place she could breathe, and you couldn't stand not being the one in control? Camden smirked. You're not above policy. You work with your hands. Stay in your lane. Noah's voice dropped low and clear. Sometimes the people with their hands in the dirt are the only ones keeping the foundation from collapsing. Camden didn't reply. But his eyes, sharp calculated, made one thing clear: this wasn't over. Later that afternoon, Noah received a text message from an unknown number. Roof. 2:30 a.m. 1 last time. The moment he read it, his breath caught. For a heartbeat, the building disappeared, and all that remained was a single line of text on a dusty screen. She wasn't gone. Not yet. The air was crisp at 2:30 a.m. when Noah stepped onto the rooftop. The city stretched endlessly around him, quiet, glowing unknowingly witness to something small and immense. She was there, leaning against the railing in a worn sweater, her hair swept back by the wind. She didn't turn when he arrived, just spoke softly into the night. I almost didn't text you. Noah stepped closer. Why did you? Because I owed you more than silence. She turned to face him, her eyes rimmed red, but not from tears. From exhaustion. From relief. I was terrified, she said. Of what they'd say. Of who I'd become. Of what I'd lose. Noah nodded. And now I'm still terrified, she admitted. But I'm not pretending anymore, and I'm done letting men in suits tell me who I'm allowed to be. They stood in silence, the breeze tugging at their sleeves. She looked up at the stars, then distant, bright, steady. Eli used to say the stars were upside-down snow, falling up instead of down. Noah chuckled, his eyes misting. Sounds like Ella and him would have gotten along just fine. Evelyn's smile faltered into something raw. I don't know what's next. I don't know if I'll stay in this city. I just know. I don't want to keep running. You don't have to. She met his gaze. What if I'm not ready for a new life? "You don't need a new one," he said gently. "Just one where you can breathe." She reached for his hand, and for the first time in what felt like years, Evelyn Langford exhaled without apology. "It's warm," she whispered, repeating the words she'd once said in a basement. "When you're here." Noah smiled. "Then stay a while." And under the vast, quiet sky where grief and healing touched hands, they did. By morning, the city felt slower, the air crisp with a fading chill, the kind that hinted at spring but still clung to winter's breath. Noah stood at the edge of the rooftop, the rising sun casting golden light across the skyline. The night before still clung to him like the scent of tea and wind, Evelyn's hand in his, her voice still echoing somewhere inside him. He'd walked her down from the rooftop just before 4 a.m. They hadn't said goodbye. Not officially. She told him she needed to clear out her office, finish things clean. He hadn't asked if she'd stay in the city. He hadn't asked if they'd see each other again. Somehow, he knew better than to turn a moment into a contract. Some things had to stay open-ended to remain real. That morning, Ella sat at the kitchen table building a tiny house from popsicle sticks and glue. "Is she okay now?" she asked without looking up. Noah poured her orange juice. "I think she's learning how to be." Ella squinted. "I don't get it." He smiled. "Me neither. But sometimes being okay isn't one big thing, it's a lot of little things starting to fit together." She placed a tiny red roof atop her house. "This one has a porch swing." For her. Noah swallowed against the ache in his throat. She'd love that. Later that week, Noah returned to work on the top floors for the first time since Evelyn had stepped down. The atmosphere was sterile, almost aggressively normal. The new interim CEO was a man with a handshake, like a cold handshake, firm, rehearsed, forgettable. Camden still prowled the halls, but his gaze had lost its edge. Rumor had it the board had softened his influence after Evelyn's exit, afraid of lawsuits, or maybe just afraid of exposure. Noah didn't care. Power games never held his attention. What did matter was the unexpected envelope left in his locker on Thursday afternoon. No name. Just a soft, ivory envelope sealed with a wax mark, subtle, precise. Inside a note in Evelyn's handwriting. "I'm heading out of town. A few weeks, maybe more. But I left something behind for you. Rooftop, 6 p.m. E." He stared at the note for a long moment. She was leaving again, but she wasn't hiding this time. At 5:59 p.m., Noah stepped onto the rooftop, bathed in the golden hue of sunset. The sky stretched wide and open above the city, a canvas painted with lavender and flame. There, near the far edge, was a small wooden bench. Newly placed, simple, weathered just enough to blend with the rooftop's character. On the seat sat a brown paper box. Inside, a worn cassette recorder, a fresh pack of blank tapes, and a folded note on lined stationery. For Ella. So she can record her stories. So she can remember what matters. And so she always has a place to speak into the silence. Noah sat down heavily. She hadn't just left a gift. She'd left trust. A message that the quiet they'd built together could carry forward even if she wasn't here to speak into it. He looked up at the horizon where the sun kissed the edges of the city's tallest towers. Then he pulled out his phone and hit record on a new voice memo. "Hey, sweetheart, this is Dad, and this is where the sky opens up." That evening, he and Ella sat on the apartment floor surrounded by markers, crayons, and the new recorder. "Can I say anything?" she asked. "Anything you want." She pressed the button, her voice soft but certain. "Today, I built a house for a lady who forgot how to smile." And then my dad reminded her. She clicked it off and grinned. "Your turn." He laughed. That's tough to follow. But he leaned in and whispered, "I saw the stars from the roof, and they reminded me of two things: my daughter's courage and a woman who taught me how to stop surviving and start living." Ella beamed, then carefully clicked save on the recorder. 2 days later, as Noah walked to the back exit of the building after his shift, he found something tucked behind the maintenance cart. A new envelope. One photo. It was a picture of Evelyn and Eli taken years ago, clearly candid. They stood beneath a tree with roots spreading behind them like veins. Eli was mid-laugh, and Evelyn's head was tilted back, eyes closed, the kind of laughter that made the world pause. On the back, scrawled in ink, "Thank you for reminding me that joy isn't something you chase. It's something you return to." E. He closed his eyes. She was still here in all the ways that mattered. That night, as the wind whispered through cracked windows and Ella snored gently on the couch, Noah climbed back to the rooftop. He didn't bring tea, or tools, or expectations. He brought himself. The bench waited. The stars shimmered overhead. He sat, pulled out the recorder, and clicked it on. "This is where you came back to me," he said. "Not as someone broken, but as someone brave." He paused, smiled, then added quietly, "I'll keep the light on." And beneath a sky wide enough to hold every loss and every beginning, Noah sat still. And waited. Not for rescue, not for answers, but for the next quiet miracle. Because somehow he knew it was coming. Noah stood just outside the basement door again. It was a Tuesday evening, 2 weeks since Evelyn had left the city. 2 weeks since the rooftop note, the recorder, and the bench. In her absence, the building had felt colder, not just in temperature, but in energy. People moved, faster, smiled less. Camden kept to himself. The board rotated through dull, interchangeable faces. But tonight, the basement was different. It had been quietly reopened for staff breaks, nothing official, just a quiet order from above. Rumor had it Evelyn had filed a final motion in her last week to renovate the old sublevel into a resting space for overnight workers. The request had passed barely and with little fanfare. No one had noticed that one of the first changes she made in her departure was for the invisible people. People like Noah. He stepped in blinking against the soft lighting now newly installed in the corner. The old industrial bulbs were replaced with soft amber sconces. A small couch, second-hand but clean, sat where exposed wiring had once been. And there, against the far wall, a plaque. The Eli Room, a place to remember, a place to rest, a place to breathe. Noah's chest tightened. He ran his fingers across the lettering. Simple, humble, but sacred. There was a folded blanket on the couch, a fresh thermos of tea, and something else. A note neatly tucked under the lid. He opened it. "Noah, I'm back in the city, just for a few days. If you still believe in second chances, I'll be waiting. Tonight. Same place, same time." E. He didn't hesitate. He left his toolbox behind, bolted up the stairwell, and exited through the rear freight corridor. The city was unusually quiet. A light mist had begun to fall soft as breath on glass. By the time he reached the rooftop, she was already there. This time, she wasn't standing. She was sitting on the bench, their bench knees pulled up slightly, hair pulled back into a casual twist. The wind teased loose strands around her face. She didn't look up until he was only a few feet away. Then she stood. Neither of them spoke. Noah crossed the last few steps, and without ceremony, without preamble, Evelyn stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. It wasn't a romantic hug. Not at first. It was something deeper, something older, the kind of embrace that says, "You survived, and so did I." Her body trembled against his, but her hands were firm, steady. She pulled back just slightly, her forehead still resting against his chest. "I wasn't sure you'd come. I was always coming," he said softly. "I just didn't know when you'd be ready." She looked up then, and the expression in her eyes was different, clearer. Not clouded by fear or loss, but focused, vulnerable in a way that was braver than strength. "I visited Eli's grave last week," she said. "First time in over a year. I took the tape recorder." Noah said nothing. He knew better than to fill silence that wasn't asking to be fixed. "I told him about you, about Ella, about the basement," she added. "And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving him behind." "You're not," Noah said. Evelyn smiled, a real one this time. "I think he would have liked you. I hope he would have liked me with Ella's waffles and bad dad jokes." She laughed, and it cracked something open. Her laugh, light unfiltered, echoed across the rooftop, a sound that hadn't lived in her lungs for too long. "I didn't come back to reclaim the company," she said. "I came back because I didn't want my story to end with a resignation email and a quiet exit." Noah looked at her. "Then how do you want it to end?" She looked out over the city. "I don't know yet, but I know I want to write it myself. Not let grief write it for me." A pause. Then softly, "And maybe, I want to write some of it with you." His heart beat faster, but he kept his voice calm. "You don't have to decide tonight. I'm not deciding. I'm just choosing to stay long enough to find out." Later that night, they walked back down to the basement together. Noah unlocked the door with the master key, and Evelyn smiled when she saw the renovations. She walked slowly to the plaque, ran her fingers across her son's name. "Thank you for keeping him alive here." Noah sat on the couch and poured her a cup of tea. "Thank you for making it real." They sat in easy silence for a while, sipping tea, watching the light bounce off the polished concrete. Evelyn pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket. "I brought something," she said, "for the wall." She handed it to Noah. It was a child's crayon drawing, a tree with deep roots, a swing, and two children underneath it, one with curly hair, one with pigtails. Between them, a sun. Noah swallowed. Ella's Evelyn nodded. "She left it in my mailbox, with a sticky note that said, 'He can come play any time.'" Noah's throat burned. He stood, found an old piece of tack from the drawer, and carefully placed the drawing beside the plaque. One for Eli, one for Ella, and one for the people who remembered what mattered most. That night, as they turned off the lights and closed the basement door behind them, there was no goodbye. There didn't need to be, because now they both understood something neither had been able to say before: home wasn't always a place. Sometimes it was a person who stayed when the world tried to walk away. And this time, neither of them walked. The sun broke through the basement window for the first time in years. It was a narrow beam, barely wider than a child's finger, filtered through dust and time, but it was real. Noah stood in its path as it spilled across the concrete floor, warming the air in a place once defined by chill. He smiled. A week had passed since Evelyn returned. In that time, she hadn't reclaimed her office or her former title. Instead, she'd moved quietly, intentionally, spending mornings with Ella. Afternoons at a local community center she was quietly funding to launch a reading program in Eli's name. No fanfare, no press, just quiet healing. And each night she and Noah found themselves back in the basement. They didn't talk about the future, not in terms of big plans or labels. They talked about Ella's drawings, about tea, about wiring and laughter, and how grief made you braver if you didn't let it drown you. Tonight, Noah was finishing the last few installations in the new break area. The transformation was almost complete: smooth benches, fresh paint, soft lights on a dimmer switch. A bookshelf donated by Evelyn, already filling with books, most of them gently used, some with inscriptions that made Noah's throat catch. The plaque remained the heart of the room, the Eli room, a place to remember, a place to rest, a place to breathe. Evelyn stepped through the doorway carrying a small paper bag and a smile that looked lighter than any he'd seen on her before. "Thought you might want a break," she said, handing him the bag. Inside, 2 homemade muffins, still warm. "Don't tell me you bake now." Noah teased, unwrapping one. "I follow instructions really well. That's my secret CEO skill." He laughed. "You should put that on your resume. Can fix companies' lives and banana bread." She sat beside him on the low bench. "I've been thinking," she said. "Uh-oh," she elbowed him gently. "About the people who never got to come down here." Noah tilted his head. "I mean the ones who worked late shifts, the ones who never had a quiet place to rest or cry or just breathe. before this room existed. Noah nodded slowly. They made do, but they shouldn't have had to, she said, eyes focused on the floor. It shouldn't take losing everything to realize what people really need. He reached over and took her hand. You're building something better now. She looked up. With you. He squeezed her fingers. That's the only way I'd do it. Just then, the door creaked and a soft voice called from the hallway. Daddy. It was Ella, wearing her mismatched socks and holding a folded blanket under one arm. Noah stood. Hey, Bug, I thought you were with Miss Marlene. I was, but I wanted to come see the Eli room. She glanced at Evelyn shyly. Is that okay? Evelyn knelt down. Of course, I'm so glad you're here. Ella tiptoed in wide-eyed. It looks peaceful. It's meant to, Noah said. This room's for everyone who needs a little peace. Ella placed her blanket on the bench beside the bookshelf. This is for people who forget to rest. Sometimes you have to be reminded. Evelyn blinked back tears. You're very wise, Ella. The girl shrugged. Daddy says that's because I'm 6 3/4. They all laughed, and for a moment the air held something more than peace, it held possibility. Later that evening, after Ella had gone home with a neighbor for a sleepover, Evelyn and Noah lingered in the basement a little longer. The light from the new sconces cast soft halos on the walls, and the scent of peppermint tea drifted between them. I met with the community board this morning, Evelyn said. Noah looked over curious. I'm funding 3 more rest spaces like this one. 1 in the Children's Hospital, 1 in the fire station near 5th Street, and 1 in the high school I used to attend. He whistled. You're quietly taking over the world. No, she said softly. I'm quietly giving pieces of it back. She stood, then walked to the plaque again and rested her fingers on the name. For so long I was afraid that if I let go of my position I'd lose him, that Eli's memory was tied to the version of me that never broke. Noah moved beside her. But that version of you never got to breathe. She nodded. Now I can. And so can he. Then, with a soft motion, she unfolded a slip of paper from her pocket. It was another drawing, this time, one she had made. A tree, with roots, a sun behind it, and 3 figures beneath the branches, one small one tall and one slightly hunched with a toolbox. I thought maybe this should go up here too, she said. Noah took the drawing. His eyes lingered on the caption beneath it, scribbled in ink. The ones who stay when the lights go out. As they pinned the drawing to the wall, the lights flickered just once. Noah reached for his belt instinctively, but Evelyn stopped him with a smile. It's okay, she whispered. Sometimes even the light needs a moment to find its rhythm. And in that moment, Noah realized something. They weren't fixing a room. They were rebuilding something bigger, something invisible but real. A home, a legacy, a life that had room for grief and joy, for endings and beginnings, for remembering what was lost and making space for what could still be found. Outside the hallway, light stretched long across the floor, and for the first time in years it didn't look like a way out. It looked like a path forward. A year later, the plaque gleamed a little brighter. It wasn't just the new coat of polish or the way the maintenance crew had repainted the walls in warm tones. It was something else, something lived in. Loved. The Eli room had become more than a renovated break space. It had become a quiet legend in the building, a place where people went not just to rest, but to reconnect. With their breath, with their stories, with themselves. A small sign had been added near the door in Ella's handwriting, laminated by Evelyn herself. You are not alone. Please sit. Please breathe. Please stay as long as you need. Ella, age 7. That morning, a group of new interns passed the door and paused, curious. One of them asked, who was Eli? Another replied, a boy who taught a woman how to come back to life. Noah overheard them as he passed with his toolbox. He smiled but didn't interrupt. Some stories were better whispered, better carried by those who'd never met the people in them but still felt their echo. He stepped inside. Evelyn was already there, sitting on the couch with a mug of tea in one hand and a small spiral notebook in the other. Her hair was a little longer now, streaked with silver she no longer bothered to hide. She looked up and smiled in that soft, unhurried way that still made his chest tighten. "You're late," she teased. He checked his watch. "By 4 minutes. I could have started without you, but you didn't." They shared a look full of all the things that no longer needed to be said. Evelyn closed the notebook and set it aside. "Ella told me this morning that she wants to write a book one day." Noah grinned. "I'm not surprised. She's got more insight than most adults I know. She said she wants it to be called The Girl Who Painted the Sky, and that the first chapter will be about a woman who forgot how to dream." Noah's smile faded into something gentler. "She sees everything. She really does." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Evelyn reached into her bag and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside, nestled in a bed of velvet, was the old cassette recorder. It had been cleaned and repaired, but the buttons were worn with use. She placed it on the table in front of them. "It still works," she said. "I tested it last night." Noah reached out and pressed play. A child's voice filled the room. 1, 2, 3. It was Eli, clearer than Noah remembered, fuller, like time hadn't faded him, only distilled him into something eternal. Evelyn closed her eyes. When the tape ended, she didn't cry. She just took a deep breath, held it, and let it go. "The sound used to undo me," she whispered. "But now, it feels like a beginning." Noah reached over and took her hand. "It is." She turned to him, eyes soft. "I was thinking, maybe we could start a small program, donate recorders to families and hospitals. Let kids record their voices, their laughter, even their dreams. Something parents can hold on to." He nodded instantly. "We'll call it the Basement Light Fund." She smiled, touched. "I like that." They both looked up at the small ceiling lamp overhead, the very same one that had once flickered unpredictably. Now it glowed steady, soft and golden. "Funny," she said. "I used to think light came from power, from achievement. Now I know it comes from presence." Noah chuckled. "Says the woman who rebuilt an entire company just by learning how to sit still." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We rebuilt it." Outside, light poured in from the high basement window. The seasons had shifted again, spring pushing through the gray of winter. Somewhere above the city moved fast as always, but here below ground time moved gently. A knock echoed at the door. Ella peeked in her hair in pigtails and a sketchpad under her arm. "Can I come in?" Evelyn smiled and opened her arms. "Always." The girl skipped in and dropped onto the floor, flipping open her pad. "I'm making a new picture. Want to help?" They knelt beside her. On the page, a tree was already taking shape. Beneath it, 3 figures held hands, but this time a 4th one stood nearby, arms wide, waiting. "Who's that?" Noah asked, pointing. Ella grinned. "That's anyone who hasn't found this place yet." They stayed there, heads close, adding to the picture, no rush, no words. Just crayons moving across paper, love across silence. When they finished, Ella held it up. A family under a tree, a sun overhead, a small plaque at the base of the trunk that read, "We are still here." And they were, still healing, still remembering, still showing up, still here. And in that warm, quiet basement beneath a city that rarely slowed down, the light, gentle, unwavering, stayed on. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop a comment below and share a little about yourself. We read every message, and it truly means the world to us. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring tales just like this one. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. Thank you for spending your time with us. Until next time, take care and keep believing in the quiet power of kindness.